Welcome back to the Two Promises podcast. Let's dive right into another exciting adventure with BD and crew as he pursues his new passion of one day finding the best, most epic bourbon. The Two Promises team sends their special thanks to Hobie and the Huckleberries for that masterful theme music. So grab a glass, relax, and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth, smooth whiskey. No more wine. I like straight bourbon. Baby, you try the ride.
Okay, welcome back. I am, again, excited to be recording again. We're going to be doing another monologue as we kind of get resettled and back into some flow things. It has so far been just a wonderful tribute to these powerful women, and right in the middle of Women's History Month, so how awesome is all of this? We've been having some scheduling issues. I've been kind of working on some of my own medical appointments and stuff. So I haven't been scheduling as many interviews, so we haven't been able to hear as many of those stories. However, our last little recording was about, again, the story of the 300, and I want to talk a little bit about those land battles that I've just been discussing. Well, those histories are a lot easier to validate, reconstruct, talk about, one, and then because they're on the land, right? And then again, who's writing these things? Who is recording these histories? And what are their perspectives? And why are they recorded this way? So when we talk about King Leonidas, well, at that same time, there's political intrigue and houses that are arguing over what should be done to thwart this invasion. And it is very clear that the Persian invaders know of this holiday and know that they're not allowed to go to war, and they're using this to maneuver into place to get the upper hand or potentially slaughter all of them during this period of peace that is designed to honor the gods. Well, her balls were so big that Plutarch quotes her. So she is written of in the recorded histories whenever in a society where women were really just not supposed to leave the house. Once they were married, they were basically considered domesticated, and they were really only allowed to be sociable like on very rare occasions. So the societal organization here was just way different from anything that we can really wrap our heads around, I believe, in kind of modern society. That's just from my understanding of it. Again, I'm not a historian or anything like that. I'm just kind of reconstructing a few of these things from knowledge, experience, and just some of the reading, right? So we're talking about how these land wars and conflicts by these generals and tacticians can be reconstructed. Sometimes the reasons behind it and like the power plays there are a lot harder to reconstruct, obviously, because who's writing the narrative afterwards. Now, let's just look at warfare, right? So, yeah, we've got this epic saga, this epic tale of 300 Spartan warriors and their battle train and whoever else they could muster to go just slow down the advance of this invading army. They knew they were not going to defeat it. They knew that they were all going to die, and that was their job. Fight to the last man, because that was all that they could do. They would not have been allowed quarter. So, they're trying to conquer this landmass. Well, what about all of the seas? What else is going on that a invading force would be trying to consider as part of their overall domination strategy? Well, they're trying to control the seas. And how would reconstructing the stories of naval battles be with sunken ships, who survived, crews that are either, forced into slavery within the new crew that's taken them or just killed? So reconstructing these things is obviously quite difficult. I was reading a book the other day, and in one of the intros it had some quotes, and one of the quotes was Proverbs 25, and it says, "The heart of a man is like deep water." Another reading that I just looked up is, "Counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out." So we're looking at the sea and the ocean, and now they say that recreating the histories of these powerful women who shaped history is like putting together the story with half of the information. This conversation is much like the soul of these waters that are very deep, right? So now we're trying to explore this vastness maybe of how these women have shaped history whenever she is remembered by Gorgo. And why was she remembered, or sorry, Queen, she was remembered by Plutarch and written of, and why was that, So we're just going to kind of, let's dive in, if you will, and kind of explore some of these stories that, you're talking about legends on land. What about the sea? This vast ocean of just danger, just the elements alone, being able to survive out there alone is in and of itself just absolutely fascinating. So in Plutarch's histories and whatever he writes, and this is also how she's remembered, he quotes Queen Gorgo as follows: "When asked by a woman from Attica, 'Why are you Spartan women the only ones who can rule men?' And Gorgo responds, 'Because we are the only ones who give birth to men.'" So they are the ones that produce the men of the Greek society, is basically what Queen Gorgo is saying. And so obviously she is just known as she should be, and she has a, what do they call it, a statue, right, erected for her, and is written down to remember her impact and what she did during this really crazy time, right? So these people who are defending and moving resources, I mean, they're some of the smartest, most brilliant minds in recorded history, and there were some written or unrecorded stories that, it's really like the depth of the sea. So I would like to hypothesize maybe that as much of our story as humans is lost in the depths of, say, a woman's soul. And so why don't we just, like a duck, dive right in a little bit and just kind of see. So whatever, I got a couple other notes here. I'm trying to kind of piece back to this from what I wrote the other day. So it's taking me a little bit to kind of pull my whole story back together the way I kind of envision the flow. So bear with me. So whenever we tell the stories of the legends who fought on the land and did the things on the land, what would be the history of Earth without the legends of the ocean and exploring those depths as well? So instead of talking about a one male mastermind who was, say, defending the landmass there, at Two Promises I like to do things a little bit differently. So I'm going to look at this story from a different lens. A lens you could say could only be viewed through the water. So if you're afraid of the water and the spooks and predators and all the things that lurk in the murk and the depths, then maybe select a different episode from one of our premium spirits. But how did Greece make peace with the Persian fleet in this history? So we got two promises to tell this story. I'm going to give you two names. So Queen Gorgo is working this here, and she's working some of these political connections, right? And meanwhile, King Leonidas is managing the land battles, and now we need to transition over to the sea. So it is the sea, so expect a few rocks and swirls and twists and twirls. Savvy? So whenever we're trying to discuss who might these heroic legendary warriors of the sea be, what would they look like? What would they be like in their society at the time? I mean, I would imagine that they would be some type of blend of like Jason Momoa meets Michael Phelps hybrid with the mind of like who knows what, right? So that's who I would think would be trying to fight this very strategic and very decisive sea naval battle, right? So, best as I can understand from an article that I just read, that the victory on the naval side of this conflict, this very crucial and very key element to keeping Greece safe from this invading army. And it occurred, as far as we can tell, by two fearless figures. I mean, we're talking fitness level 10,000, I love you 3,000 type, if you know what I mean by that. These people have to have been just sheer giants, really. So let's just plunge right in and get to know them. If the Persian Navy had won at the naval battle of Salamis, Greece would have still fallen despite all of the Molon Labe and all that stance that was held on land. So we enter two champions from the depths. From the depths, we enter champion number 1, Hydna of Scione. I don't know if I'm saying any of that right because I don't speak that language, but Hydna. So who is this sexy hunk of flesh? Well, she is a very influential swimming instructor in the ancient Greek world. That is Hydna. So, pretty sexy, right? So, pretty dreamy, right? Yeah. Amazing. So, who is our second hero that braved these waves to seize the seas? If any of you all have daddy issues, then you should switch drinks. It was her father. Let me get this name pronounced right. Give me one moment. Scyllis. Okay, that was definitely not nearly as intuitive as Hydna. So, we have Scyllis. That's her father, right? So, he was a diving instructor, and he taught the Grecian art of swimming. So how did this father-daughter duo do in the deep what King Leo and Queen Gorgo did on the soil? Well, in order to pull off this victory against this Persian fleet, they had to go out alone, the two of them, against insurmountable, completely terrible odds. Not just the entire Persian fleet did they have to fight against, but some would say they would even have to wrestle with Poseidon himself in a horrible storm that's depicted in the sequel to the 300. Just a monstrous swirl of splintered wood, crashing waves, and just semen just sprayed everywhere. And, I mean, the just destruction that occurred out on those waters was just, quite brutal. But in order for Hydna and Scyllis to, strike a damaging blow to the heart of the Persian fleet, they had to swim 10 miles into this storm, this raging storm, and then they had to dive under the water in the swirling and the raging sea, and they cut the mooring lines of the Persian ships at anchor. Oopsies, right? So in the middle of this awful storm, I can imagine the Persian Navy, like all of the sailors on there and like the slaves and whoever's rowing the boats and just manning all of this stuff, they are just trying to wait out this storm, just ready for things to calm down enough for them to be able to go strike at the Greek fleet. And in the middle of this awful storm, awful storm, they were just waiting it out. They were trying to wait for the weather conditions to be more suitable for, civilized armed combat. Well, heads down, bitches. While you slept, Hydna and Scyllis held their breath and slit the ropes. The wreckage and the devastation the Persian admirals found once the stormy seas calmed was just too great for them to be able to create a decisive enough victory in order for them to invade the Greek lands from behind the Spartan fleet, or the Spartan army that was holding Thermopylae, because they were looking to completely envelop them, was one of the strategies that they were looking to do, and then overrun the capital, completely destroy it, raise every building to the ground, burn it completely, and then start it back over underneath this new rule of this new government, which they ultimately were unable to do that. So they were not able to burn all of Greece to the ground for the defiance of their god king and bitches that gave him stitches. Yeah. So the bitches gave him stitches, so better like next time. Hydna and Scyllis, they pretty much did some awesome work at the sea while all of this other chaos was going on the land battle. So I just wanted to do another quick little narrative that's some pretty interesting Greek history. So this is BD with another episode on the Two Promises podcast. We have Greek on Fleek. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to recording more with some of our listeners, with some of you, and with some of the names that you've already met, and getting a little bit more into life and some of these questions that we're all curious about. So in celebration of our Women's History Month and this just powerful body of knowledge and skills and love and just amazing stuff that I can't even really begin to talk about right now, so I'm not even going to try to. Thanks to all the powerful women out there. I want to say thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Two Promises podcast.
Thank you for joining us today on this curious roller coaster of life. If this is your stop, please exit peacefully and enjoy the rest of your day. If you're ready for another one, just push play. A final note before you go: thank you. And thank you for feeling. The distillation and aging process is different for everyone. I'm not quite sure what you're ready for, so please sip slowly and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth whiskey. No more